Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Joe Emilio Show. I'm your host, Joe Emilio, and well, ladies and gentlemen, this is just going to be a 1 hour show. I have my guest here with me. He's going to be here in just a moment. Rob Hutchinson from Dear SA. He was supposed to join me last night, but unfortunately, of course, as you guys know, stage 6 load shedding, making that a bit impossible to happen last night. So we decided to do it today. He has electricity at 3. I have electricity at 3. So we're like, cool, let's do it then. Getting everything organized was a bit of a hassle. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, Rob from Dear SA is here. And there you can see him popping up on your screen right now. Rob from Dear SA coming to us from the Blue Room and the headquarters of Dear SA.
Yeah, the Blue Room. That doesn't sound too great, though, does it? No political affiliation whatsoever, I assure you.
Damn, I thought it sounded cool. It sounded cool in my head, but okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, Rob, thanks again for joining me. I really wanted to get you back on the show to chat about what DRSA has been up to. As you know, during the lockdown, towards the end of lockdown, you were very frequently on the show. I know that DRSA is very busy with a lot of different campaigns and so on and so forth. But I thought that maybe we could get an update, especially about the amendments to the Health Act. Where are we? I know you had a court case in July, I believe. So where are we on that front?
Still a long way to go on that one, Joe. There's no doubt about that. I think that one's going to be with us for quite some time, as we still have our case lodged in court. It's still on the court roll, and that's a good thing because while it's on the court roll, there's a very slim chance, no, in fact, pretty much no chance that the minister can enact the regulations as they are, as we have mentioned them in our court papers several times in exchanges backwards and forwards. So if the minister decides to go on and implement those regulations, those temporary ones that would not be permanent, then we would instantly be able to go to court and challenge it on those grounds. So luckily we have that still on the court roll. A lot of other organizations were on the urgent court roll, and we played a bit of a strategic game there and didn't cite it as an urgent matter because we've had experience before where cases are thrown out based on urgency, and the merits of the case are never heard. So we decided this one, and luckily it played out for us quite well. So the chances of it getting heard this year are quite slim. It'll only be heard probably February, March, even probably later next year, which is great because in the meantime, the regulations can't be imposed and can't be set into the law. Ooh, can't tell you, Joe.
Sorry, my bad. I was on mute.
Cool.
What I was saying is, seeing as it's in court at the moment, right? Technically, I'm assuming you can't speak too much about the case.
Why not?
Okay, so specifically, what I wanted to ask is like, you know, you went to court. I think you went to court in July, correct? There was some kind of court hearing in July, or did that not happen?
Yes, yes. So what happened there is there were several organizations going in on pretty much the same case. So the judge president put them all together, combined them all, and then cited the court case as moot, because because he had withdrawn the regulations, but he'd withdrawn the
Okay.
temporary regulations, those limited regulations, not the full regulations, which are actually still out for comment, were still out for comment at that stage. So luckily, um, we managed to keep the case on the court roll, and that's the progress so far. We
Okay.
have had correspondence from them stating that it will be challenged, and so we're just waiting now.
Okay. All right. So, do you think that? I mean, you and I have spoken endlessly about the ANC and how they like to play games and stuff like that. Do you think that the
Mm.
ANC might try and see this as an opportunity to play games again? Because I mean, you can't. The opportunity for commenting is over. That's now
Mm.
closed. Do you think that the ANC might start saying, "Oh, well, some of the comments are missing"?
Look, I'm not going to put anything aside there. Anything's possible. We've seen that tactic before in other cases and in other participation events. So I wouldn't put it aside. But no, I think they'll play the game here, because it is quite an important piece of legislation that is being amended. The Health Act is applied nationwide, not just locally. So, and it's permanent as well, and this amendment gives the minister far too much power. So, and even it could even threaten the ANC themselves if the minister suddenly decides that he's not part of the ANC, which is quite possible. Then he has the power to collapse the ANC through this act in any way he might seem fit or he might want to. But I don't think they'll play too many games here. My honest feeling is they are currently playing a game, and that is a legal strategy there to keep us under pressure. But uh, my honest feeling is they'll back out of this because we have a very strong case, and it is pretty much legally sound. you know the whole crux of it is that the these regulations do not belong underneath the Health Act, and they are way outside the parameters and boundaries of the Health Act. So, and that's a fact in law. So, if they want to challenge that, then they're going to have to first amend the law, and that's not going to happen here. But they will resist and they will fight and try and bury us with legal costs and so on, as they normally do in all of these things. Create public hype around it. Act like they're winning and they're on top of it. But at the end of the day, I don't think anything will happen with it.
Fantastic. Well, I guess that's good news in a way. Maybe they wanted to quietly just go away. I don't know if you saw, there was a headline, I saw it this morning actually. Biden has come out and said that, the spicy cough is over, that there is no
Yeah.
more, no reason to worry anymore. And I was like, apparently. But yeah, I expect that the entire world will soon follow suit. So
Yeah.
for them, if for example, the rest of the world starts saying, yeah, it's over, and South Africa will probably eventually say the same thing, then these health amendments don't
Mm.
make any sense, which will obviously make your
Yeah.
case a whole lot stronger.
Absolutely it will. But remember that it's not just for COVID. They can bring it in for any identifiable threat or health threat. So if it's a different virus, or if it's another threat or reemergence of the virus, if it was placed under the Health Act, they have the full power to reenact it without any oversight. But that's also one of the main things, is that we want it to be set aside, can't be under the Health Act. If something does arise again, then government can use the Disaster Management Act once again. Their argument is that it takes too long to get things running through the Disaster Management Act, and in a case like in a pandemic case, they need to act rather quickly. Our argument is that no, you've shown that you can enact the Disaster Management Act and the regulations in pretty much 24 hours in other cases, such as droughts or floods and so on. There's no reason that you can't do it for another pandemic, especially since you have a working model that you've used in the past. So no, it must only be housed under temporary legislation, not permanent.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And obviously, as we get closer to your court date next year, we'll keep an eye on it, and we'll talk more about it. Possibly after, hopefully. I mean, I hope the ANC will just be like, okay, let's just leave it, dismiss it, or not dismiss it, but like throw it out or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Just we'll give up, and then you can come on the show and be like, we won.
Exactly.
um, all right, so Another reason why, well, one of the reasons why I wanted you on here is, like I said, to chat about DRSA and other campaigns that you guys have at the moment. So, just off the top of your head, what's one very big one that you think South Africans should be concerned about?
There's quite a few. We've got quite a few that have just come to an end, which was quite fascinating. We obviously had the um, call for comment on Eskom's tariff increases, 38% tariff increase. Hello, Cameron. And I think that is perhaps that campaign ended too soon, because if with the amount of load shedding at stage 6 that's going on now, then it's their 38% increase is absolutely unjustified. There's no way they can go with that one. But maybe we will open it up, and you can just have your say. If you want to vent frustration towards ESCOM, then go for it. As we know, every comment goes directly through to government. So flood them with hate mail. Let's do that. Get nurses, kick nurse in the butt, get them to act and get these things right. Maybe a change of management will help, but I don't know if it will. I think ESCOM's rotten to the core. There's no hope for it. So yeah, I don't know. That's something we should actually chat about. Is what are the solutions for South Africa on ESCOM? But maybe we can chat about that later.
Yeah.
Um, Another campaign that we've got on the go now, which will actually be live today. I'm just checking my notes here. Sorry. There's two that are quite important. Um, One which people might not realize is important is the next generation radio frequency policy. So, what government has proposed there is a total restructuring of the spectrum allocations, and they call it radio frequency, but it's obviously all frequencies that are used for broadcast. So that's telecommunications, broadcasting, TV, in anything. So what they're trying to do there is clean up the spectrum. It's overcrowded, and introduce 5G. 5G has its own spectrum allocation, so this is the beginning of that rollout. They're also getting proposing to get rid of 2G and 3G, as not many people use them anymore, and they need that space. What they claim this will open up economic development, will give broadband access to pretty much every South African, and can be used in particular note for a state digital infrastructure project, which I think you and I chatted about some time ago. So the state's introducing their own cloud network and their own communications network and so on. Obviously, they want to control most of the conversations and uh, copywriting and everything else is housed on state infrastructure. And this expansion or cleanup of the spectrum will enable that state digital infrastructure to proceed ahead as they have it planned.
But
It's
hold
actually a
on.
state digital company.
Yeah, like hold on, Rob. I gotta interject there because you're saying all these lovely things. Well, they're not lovely, but I mean like the ANC is saying all these lovely things, lovely in very big
Yeah,
quotation marks. But there's no electricity. Like when you have no electricity, there is no radio frequencies or anything like that because there's nothing to power these things on
exactly.
towers or whatever you have. I mean, like I saw an article just now earlier today. You guys actually, I saw it from the DRSA Telegram group. We're sharing an article about how Vodacom can't
Mm,
basically keep communication going. That
correct.
there's they're
Doesn't
looking
it?
at a mobile blackout. So I mean, you want to do all these things, but you don't have electricity. I think this is all just smoke and mirrors. I think
Mm,
that I mean I shared with you an article as well speaking about the digital, thing where they want to license Wi-Fi, you know,
yeah.
which which We all know they say, "Oh, we want to license Wi-Fi because the money from the licensing will go towards building towers and giving access to people in rural areas or the poor to internet." Internet for everyone, right? That sounds great. Okay, cool. I'm for that. But we all
Mm,
know what's going to happen with that money.
exactly. It'll never make it there. There's no doubt.
No.
But there's other more pressing matters like increases to politicians and a new fleet of BMWs. Far more pressing than internet for everyone.
Yeah. Do you really think that, I mean, even, okay, like it is a dangerous thing that they're asking to do because, like you said, to be in control of the digital, or the state to be in control of digital assets and be able to censor probably, I mean, like it's like Cuba, right? Cuba, you have to have and you have to enter your ID number when you want to use the internet. I mean, that's how constrained it
Mm,
is. And there's certain
mm,
websites that you can go to and certain websites you can't go to. So I think that's probably where the ANC wants to go. But do you really think they're going to
mm.
be able to implement it?
Eew. Tough question. I think they will. I think they will. That's the danger because remember they have external players assisting here. I'll give you an example. I recently spent 3 days in the Pan African Parliament, and uh, as you go in, they have to register you, take a photograph of you, and enter your details. And I've just moved down to the Cape, so I put my new address in there. It's the first time I've ever put my new address in any system. And lo and behold, on the N2, uh, I get a fine for something that I didn't do, and he's already got my details with my new address there. Not from my number plates, because I was driving somebody else's car, but from my ID number. So the systems are connected. They are connected, and we have to realize that whatever data you give in, whatever personal information you give in, goes into a system, and they are interlinked. And government has expressed this before. I've seen a couple of policies floating around in Parliament which talk about a whole integrated IT system where they're trying to bring everything into one space. So yeah, that's it is a possibility that they will get it right.
Look, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing because I mean, in the States, there's systems like that, right? And in Europe, right? So if
Mm,
and I have friends in Europe, and they were telling me who used to live in South Africa, who were telling me the difference, like how the infrastructure works. So, like for example, like you just said, you change your address somewhere, and all of a sudden your like you change your address, I don't know, with a bill for your phone. You tell your phone company, "Oh, I changed my address," but now the bank will also know the new address, right? Which isn't
yeah,
necessarily a bad thing because that, you know, eliminates you having to go to the bank and spend time there and blah blah.
mm,
So there is a bit of convenience in that, but I guess
without a doubt.
there's also a bit of I don't know. Is there a danger in that? I don't really know. My question is, you know, I think there's going to be glitches in the system, and it's really only going to affect, I think, the middle class and the rich. I don't
Mm,
think. I mean, let's face it. The majority of South Africans are poor, unfortunately, and a lot of them don't have cars. And even if they have cars, I doubt they're registered correctly. So yeah, I don't see this helping South Africans on a mass scale. I like you said earlier, I
mm,
think there's other more pressing issues in South Africa than worrying about a central system. Which again, central system not a bad idea, but we
mm.
don't have electricity right now.
Exactly. Nothing's going to work in the first place. Yeah, that's a problem. Exactly. But that is probably why they want to roll out the Wi-Fi and 5G and everything else through the state. What's it, the State Digital Infrastructure Company, and then it'll monitor everyone because, as you say, to log in, you're going to have to be using your device. Your device is registered to you and only you, and then everything works together. They can track everything. You know, currently, government, if they wanted to, they can just check your IP address uh, and then summon your ISP, and they can grab all your internet browsing history, no matter what. So there is that danger, But the thing is, will they? Will they know what to do with it? Well, who knows? We've seen so many times where they get the data, but they have no idea what to do with it. So it makes no difference. But
I
I think
think
electricity is definitely the problem.
I think the data that they look, or I think it depends on the person that they get the data from.
Yes.
So I'm sure they would love to know some dirty secrets of John Steenhazen, or
Mm.
I mean, I'm pretty sure Beketele has used this feature to get some dirt on
Oh,
Cyril.
no doubt.
Like,
No doubt. No doubt. No doubt. And Zuma himself as well. I mean,
yeah,
he was the head of state intelligence. So
exactly.
yeah.
There's there's Tele and Zuma. They know something about Cyril and the whole ANC. There's no doubt about that. So I think they have already used some of this tech, but I think they target certain people that they feel, I don't know, they want leverage over, or I don't know, something
Of
like that.
course, political opponents
Yeah,
are the obvious target. First off, there's no doubt. You always want to know the art of war. I suppose is know your enemy better than you know yourself, or better than they know themselves. That is exactly what they're doing there. The more information and data that you have on your so-called enemy, or even your closest allies, is helpful. Uh, Kind of like I've been rewatching The Sopranos lately, and it's exactly that. The more information a gangster has about his closest allies, the easier they are to control and undermine if there's something goes wrong. So
absolutely.
it's no different in politics.
No, absolutely. Well, in specifically with the ANC, it does operate like a syndicate. Let's be honest. So,
Yeah,
no
yeah.
no surprise there. But Rob, sorry, I interrupted you. So what else is DRSA busy campaigning with that South Africans should pay attention to?
There's a new campaign which is also about to be launched on revising the national strategy for water use charges. So what they're doing here is introducing new categories of water usage and of water users. So there'll be agricultural, domestic, mining, and a whole lot more power generation, um, and so on. And all of these will have different charges and levies associated to them. This also brings about charging for all types of water, even if it's from a natural resource. As they say, water is a finite resource which must be managed properly. So this is part of a larger agenda. Again, I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing smart water meters appearing soon enough, and exactly the same as electricity and energy usage. The same thing will apply to water.
So okay, we're gonna be okay. How, sorry, that one's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. Can we still comment on that one? Is
Yes,
it
yeah, that one
okay?
will be open pretty soon. Yeah,
All right.
and there's another one, Joe, that's quite interesting. Um, it's the regulations for frail care and healthcare facilities, mental health care facilities for the elderly. And what what this policy seems to be doing is over regulating quite severely and making it extremely difficult for private healthcare facilities to operate. And um, it seems like quite of a crazy thing because there really is no other option other than private healthcare facilities for mentally challenged and for the elderly and so on. And they have imposed a whole set of regulations which control absolutely everything from financial to reporting to uh, absolutely everything. And this poses huge costs on private healthcare. So it's clear. I've had quite a senior person have a look at this, quite a senior advocate, and also I've had a frail care somebody who owns a frail care center also have a look, and they clearly say it looks like government is trying to shut down private healthcare facilities by making them overburdening them with overbearing regulations, which is crazy. We've seen such problems with state-owned facilities, and there's no way that that will ever improve. So we should be encouraging uh, private healthcare facilities to operate and making it easy for them to operate, rather than going through this type of tough legislation. I can understand that their private healthcare facilities need to be regulated, but this is just a couple of steps too far.
Well, there's regulation that I think is fair, and then there's regulation that's overstepping, or the state is overstepping their boundaries and power. But you know what, you mention all this stuff, and it's like we see this around us, right? It's not just, well, let me first say this. I think that it could have something to do with NHI, because what the ANC will try and do is twist the narrative and say, see, private sector is failing to take care of our old people. We need NHI, without all the details of why the private
Yeah.
sector is failing to take care of the frail, right? I think this is another way that they're going to try and push the NHI
Mm.
idea forward. And we see this in many different ways, not just with NHI, or I'm going to step away from that for a moment. And the ANC seems to want to get its tentacles in on everything. And when it does, it just regulates and regulates and regulates. I mean,
Mm.
this is exactly why businesses struggle in South Africa, is because all of these policies and regulations and all that stuff, not to mention the labor laws, also make it pretty much difficult for companies to hire, because they're scared to hire people, because there's more rights for the laborer than there are the employer, which some would say, oh, but that's a good thing. And not when you're trying to create an environment where everyone is supposed to get a job. It doesn't really,
Exactly.
it's not the best thing. The employer should be just as protected as much as the employee. It should be equal,
Yeah.
but it's not. It weighs more in the employee favor. But getting back to the NHI and all that stuff, um, yeah, what do you think would happen, for example, if, let's say the private sector with who take care of the frail start leaving? Basically, companies start going, you know what, we're going to start going somewhere else. Businesses start leaving,
Mm.
and you start putting people in the government care. What do you think is
No,
going to happen?
well, life is a dominion. Let me say no more than that. We know exactly what's going to happen. Uh, any government healthcare facility is run down, under-equipped, understaffed, not maintained properly, and definitely not functional. Well, might be functional, but barely functional. Not to the standards that a private healthcare facility is. And is that due to a lack of funds, or just a lack of training, or whatever? Probably a combination of everything. So no, yeah, if they shut down private healthcare facilities, I think we're in big trouble. And the elderly and frail might suffer quite considerably. But that also seems to be a larger agenda. There seems to be a definite uh, a move to push old people out of the system. As you know, they are seen as a burden on the system because of grants and pensions and healthcare. They'll I bet if you look at any medical aid, the biggest claimants are the elderly. So the NHI, as you say, will have to take up that burden. And when you have people who aren't earning but are on pension, then how do they contribute to the NHI? But they will be the biggest claimants.
Mm.
So, yeah, interesting times ahead. But it does definitely seem to be that every government across the world is facing the same problem. Get Push out the elderly, get them off the system, bring in the younger folk, and get them jobs so that they can support the elderly. But when you have a huge unemployment like we do in South Africa, I think our youth unemployment is about 75% unemployed in the youth. So how are you going to support any social system, especially for the elderly? It's quite a concern. Yeah.
Well, I don't think. I think, and I'm gonna sound like such a conspiracy theorist right now. I don't I don't think that the ANC really cares about the any South African, not just the old, but specifically,
Yeah.
um, look, when the NHI gets implemented, there's a huge money pot that they're going to be taking from.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll ask for funds from overseas. I mean, Cyril just now over the weekend was asking for funding for what's it called, renewable energy from Biden from the U.S. So they'll go and they'll ask for more money because we need to start the NHI. Our people are suffering, our old are dying, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll get money, but will it go towards what it's intended to? Of course not. This is just another way for ANC to either launder money or just pay certain people or keep the money for themselves, whichever way they want to do it.
Yeah.
And I've said this before on the show, and I keep on saying it. We are witnessing the biggest heist in human history right under our nose. And the craziest thing about it is it's illegal, but the ANC is making it legal in a way. Like they're just getting away with it and nobody's doing anything.
Of course, that's exactly what's happening, and they use state-owned facilities like ESCOM to launder out that money. That's why they all fail and then receive these massive bailouts, and those bailouts just simply vanish into thin air. That's exactly what is happening, and what makes it even worse is the ANC is under the threat of being unseated in 2024, which which yeah, just I think it just opens the floodgates for looting right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They've got nothing. They've got literally nothing to lose,
Yeah.
so they will do it. And yeah, that brings another problem as I see it. There is, um, will they go if let's say they are unseated in 2024? Will they leave peacefully, or will they cling on to those positions and make it really difficult to push people out? I mean, they're really lucrative positions as they are,
Yeah.
and any party or coalition party that does come in, the first thing they're going to do is try and prosecute the looters from the previous government. That's not going to go down too well either. So I think the ANC will fight to stay in power as long as they can, and by hook or by crook, they will.
I think in some ways yes, and in some ways no. So here's the
Mm,
interesting part when you start looking at the numbers, which Franz Cornier the other day in another interview was saying, which reminds me,
mm.
I got to get that guy back on my show. But he was saying
Is
that
it amazing?
he yeah, he was saying that come 2024, if the same turnout of 2019 happens, which I can't remember the numbers, but he says if it's the same turnout for voter turnout, then the ANC will probably hold on to that 50%, but it will be 50%. It will be on the dot
Mm,
50%. That's their numbers, that's their calculations. If it's the same turnout, voter turnout for the municipal elections that happened last year or the year before, then the ANC
mm.
will fall under 50%, and you're looking at a coalition government. Now, the issue is who does the ANC go into coalition with? Could be DA. I don't know how people are going to feel about that. Probably going to be like smaller parties like Good and Cope and
Yeah.
some other ones, and obviously EFF. Either way, I think Cope and Good and all these other ones are just sister parties to the ANC. So we're still in the same predicament.
Mm,
So that's what, and I think that's like you said now, because everyone keeps on saying they're not going to leave peacefully. I think that's the way it's actually going to go. I think they're going to try and align themselves with parties that are similar to them, and still hold on and almost be like, hey, you want Patricia Dillon? You want a piece of the trough? Well,
Mm,
let's work something out, so we can all be in
exactly.
power. You know what I mean? And who knows? Maybe this was a strategy right from the beginning. What they call paid opposition, if you will. I don't know if that's the correct term in this case. But but yeah, I think that there's a high probability of that happening. Um, which unfortunately ANC South Africa can't afford that for another 5 years, even
Yeah,
that kind of coalition.
yeah,
So yeah,
exactly. You spot on. You spot on. I'm of a firm belief that that will definitely happen. Everybody talks about an opposition coalition, but they seem to ignore that there will be a ruling party coalition as well, and it will definitely be made up of all those small one representative parties that are there. They still hold a significant number of seats, and we've seen an alignment in the past in Parliament in voting sessions. So it's easy to identify who those coalition partners will be. So yeah, it's I don't think they will be unseated in 24, not by a long shot. Maybe in the next round in 29. Let's hope something will happen there. But the country will be in a very different place then.
yeah. I don't think we can survive. That's the thing. Like, this is my
Mm,
prediction for the future, right? I think that what's going to happen is 2024. There will be, if the ANC is not if the ANC is below 50%, obviously, then they'll be in a coalition that will take a few weeks to finalize. I don't think it's going to happen immediately. And then people, I don't think people are going to start basically giving up in terms of, like, not giving up in the sense of like giving up on life. I mean, giving up in the system. Like, I think,
precisely.
yeah, I think everyone's just going to be like, you know what, we got to fend for ourselves. We got to, like, get together, protect our communities. Let's get our
Yeah.
own source of water. Let's get our own source of electricity. Let's get our own, just everybody on their own. And I think there will be, by the time 2029 comes along, a very near state collapse.
Mm.
And
If not,
yeah, and in that process, I do think that KZN and Western Cape would have seceded. During that
yes.
time, during between 2024 and 2029, at some point, those provinces would have
Mm.
seceded. And I think that either way in 2029, we're going to see a very different South Africa than we know it
So,
today. That's
absolutely
my
totally.
prediction.
No, I support the prediction absolutely. I think KZN will be the first to secede because they have the means to do so through the Ngonyoma Trust. And then Western Cape will follow. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see others as well, possibly split into four. South Africa might possibly be split into four economic zones, and with different regulations and laws and whatever, different states. But you know what, Joe? I think that's the way to go. I really do. I think that's the only way to save South Africa is to split it up.
Well, I mean, if you split it up, it's no longer South Africa. Because
Yeah, yeah. United States of South Africa.
that's federalism. But we'll see. I mean, I don't think it's all doom and gloom, because again, organizations such as DRSA are fighting the good fight, making sure that certain things don't happen. I know that you've mentioned before that on the front of secession, if need be, you guys would be there. DRSA would allow people to give comment if needed. Like, let's say, for
Yeah,
example, they start attacking, ANC decides to try and change the constitution of secession, where that little section of secession is there. I'm
yeah,
sure you guys would be like,
yeah.
no, hold on.
Yeah.
So, um, moving back to DRSA, is there anything else that people should be wary of? You spoke about the digital thing. The water thing sounds very serious.
Mm, mm.
Is there anything else that people should look out for?
There's plenty, Joe. There's plenty. There are currently about 50 bills sitting before Parliament. And if I can explain what a bill is a draft piece of legislation, either an amendment or a new proposition to hopefully get approved and be promulgated into law. And there's 50 of these bills sitting before Parliament right now, and all of them have to go out for public comment through the normal public participation process as required in the Constitution. So, yeah, there's a lot of important stuff that's coming our way. The NHI is quite a big one. The talk around expropriation without compensation has once again started up. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a really hell of a lot going on. Um,
Is there
on our
any
website, there's quite a few
Sorry.
campaigns.
Is there anything you
Hmm.
can tell us about the expropriation without compensation? Because that was in the news recently in the past 2 weeks, I believe.
Hmm.
Or was it last week that there was a committee on it and they paused it or something like that?
Yes, yeah. So it was voted for. That the update so far is it was voted for in Parliament, or voted, and the outcome was that it was voted against. That the Constitution Section 25 should not be replaced, and that was all falling under the Constitution 18th Amendment Bill. And the 18th Amendment Bill, there's actually a call for comment on an amendment to the Constitution, and it is also called the 18th Amendment. So they've done away with the previous 18th Amendment, which was expropriation without compensation. They're now running something else, which is totally unrelated, and the bill or the amendment to the Constitution is now off the table. However, there is other legislation in the form of expropriation bills in themselves, which have been around for quite a while. And those are around how government um, expropriates property from private owners. If they want to build a highway, if they want to build a servitude or something else like that, government can expropriate your property. However, with market related compensation, so those are under review now. We've seen the Trespassing Act, which is also pointing towards expropriation or land grabs and so on, depending on how you interpret it. And I must say, it's quite a vague piece of legislation, can be interpreted anyway. Um, but yeah, there's what we've got to look for now is those sneaky little bills that are coming in that are not so obvious. Because if you combine them all together, then then you can see the bigger picture. So government seems to be presenting little steps forward here instead of a lump sum, and that's what we've got to be aware of. And the beauty of being involved in the work that Dear South Africa does is that we get to see all of these bits of legislation coming, and it's eventually start realizing that it's all part of one big network of change that's happening. So we'll keep the public updated as to what's going on, even if it's a little bill. If we feel it's important or related to expropriation, then we'll definitely make a fuss about it.
And what is that bigger picture, Rob, that you guys are starting to see?
A full move into state-controlled systems. We're heading towards communism. To put it bluntly,
Yeah.
there's no looking at any other direction. That's where we're headed. Government has cited China as a great example of governance. Um, we've seen other influence. You were talking about Cuba. That's also coming our way, and all of government's friends, allies, and uh, let's say countries of inspiration. I think that's a great term. Countries of inspiration for the ANC lean towards communism and socialism. So if it will work in South Africa, I highly doubt it.
Well, that's the thing, Rob. Even if they want to implement all that stuff, like they want to go full on communism, right? Like nothing works. Like you don't have electricity again. I fail to understand because like that's the thing. They keep on saying like, oh, we look up to China, whatever. China has a very strong economy. Like
Yeah.
it rivals the U.S. It has infrastructure that works. The cops like yes, there is a bit of corruption, but there's corruption everywhere. But
Mm.
the cops still, they're an institute that is feared there. They people fear the government, and again, stuff works. Like there's electricity. There's an economic hub. There's jobs and stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of poor people in China, but I'm saying that it's a country that does or has managed to make things work. Whereas
Yeah.
South Africa is a country that is busy destroying almost every single infrastructure that the ANC can get its hands on is being destroyed.
Mm.
ESCOM literally on a thread. Trains gone, stuff being stolen. Roads are now so dangerous to be on because of trucks having to basically pick up the weight, excuse the pun, of trains because you can't transport things on trains anymore.
Mm.
And the list can go on. There's problems at our shipyards. There's problems with communication. There's problems with everything. So even though the ANC wants to implement all this stuff, I go again and I say, no, they just, I think they know the writings on the wall, whether it's on 2024, 2029, they don't want to implement. I mean, they act like they do. Because if they get the chance to implement expropriation without compensation, that just means more money for them. I think they're just trying to take chances to get more money. That's all it is. What they're gonna do with that money, I have no idea. But I don't think I don't think that even if the ANC was to implement communism,
Mm.
it would be the communism that you and I have heard of. I think it's going to be like horrible, absolutely horrible. I think you'll have a situation where the rich are the rich and the poor are the poor. There's no middle class. The gap would have been
Well,
extreme. Yeah,
that is exactly what it is.
yeah,
There'll be the Politburo, and there'll be the working class, which is everyone else. Government owns everything, and the easiest way for government to own everything or a new system to be introduced is to collapse an old system. You can't build something on top of something else. There's a, it's a. If you look at China 20, 30 years ago, that's currently where South Africa is now, and you got to collapse the system, introduce government controlled economic zones, and treat those as a, what do they call them, communist capitalist centers.
yeah. Which is
So
an
yeah,
oxymoron, but yeah.
totally. But they drive the economy, and then after a certain period of time, you change them back to full communist again, which is exactly what's happening in China. So I think we will follow the Chinese model. We've seen too much praise, too much alignment. There's too much, should I say, interference from China in South Africa already, and many rules that have been set around that. So that's, if you want to know what's going on, have a look at China 30 years ago, and then you'll see the trajectory for South Africa, where we headed, what laws are going to be introduced, and so on. Which brings us back to the state-controlled um, uh, data system, and that, to control people, you need to know everything about them, and that's exactly what China's doing. And no doubt South Africa will introduce that system as well, with the help of the Chinese. So again, to answer your question, whether that government will get it right, yeah, I think they will. They will get that right. They have to.
They might. Otherwise, I think they have deals with China. So if they don't fulfill those deals, China just comes in and says, "Well, you owe us a debt, so this country's ours now."
Mm.
So there's also that possibility. But okay, but seriously, just as we close the conversation, Rob, what it sounds like a lot of doom and gloom, and I really want to try and end on a high note. Because I'm sure a lot of people are going to watch this and be like, I'm out of here. But what can we do to help either make it really difficult for ANC to implement communism or stop it?
Oh, become less reliant on government. That's what I tell everybody. That's all we have to do, is stop thinking government can solve the problems, because that's not their goal. The goal is to create problems. So stop believing what comes out of government, because if they say it's for your own good, or for the betterment, or for South Africans, it's most definitely not. Start making friends with your neighbors. I think that's a good start, because you're gonna have to build strong communities to stay, afloat, or survive this. I don't think there's any way we can stop it, and we have to realize that. But we can certainly survive it, and we survive it by building resilient communities, sub economies, and so on. Um, it's when I say become less reliant on government, I mean don't do any business with government, don't trade with government, just try and avoid government as much as you can. Use cash, don't use credit. Use cash in your transactions. Use I sound like a total conspiracy theorist here, but that is where we're going. Yeah, but use that, become friends with your neighbors, build those communities, and then when things do go down, at least you know your neighbors and you can build a plan together and look after yourselves on a small scale. That that to me is the best solution anyone can ask for. Then look at going off grid as a community rather than as individual. It blows my mind that most South Africans live in complexes, yet they're still reliant on Eskom and local water suppliers and so on. Build something in the complex that everyone can use. It makes a hell of a lot of economic sense and literal sense as well. You know, and I think the more that South Africans do that, the better our chance of survival at the end of the day. So yeah, I think that's all the only advice I can give. And even
Well,
businesses, build local businesses and sub economies. And I've seen some towns that are introducing their own form of currency. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You place value on stuff that you believe has value instead of what the government tells you to do.
yeah, the government can't stop you from building enclaves and building small little communities to fend off
No, it's
what
in the
they're busy doing.
Constitution. You
Yeah,
you you can do it. The Constitution allows for it, so we should be doing more of it.
exactly. And look, I think the biggest enclave that's going to develop once call it what you will, state collapse, communism, or whatever comes first, is the Western Cape. People might laugh at that, but I really do. I think the Western Cape, like people are always shocked when I tell them like, the Western Cape has its own what's it called, a stock market. That's a thing. It's
Yeah.
it's it's real.
Mm.
It's there. At the moment, DA is busy developing its own police force. At the moment, DA is trying to get the control of the rail lines, and also control of tax, the tax issue, or like when we give tax back
Mm.
to the ANC and stuff like that, trying to control our own tax. Those four things are very autonomous, and if the Western Cape was to control those things, it means that even in a state collapse, we would be fine. And in a way, secession would happen automatically. But that's if there's a state collapse, which, I mean, we could argue if that's happening now or going to happen before the next election. But yeah, I think that the DA and the Western Cape province is definitely doing what you've just suggested. Is I mean, in
Yeah,
2 or 3 years, the mayor wants to be off the grid of Eskom, or at least Western Cape producing its own electricity and not relying on Eskom. So there you go. In a way,
mm,
Western Cape is trying to protect itself from the state, which is the ANC. So follow suit,
absolutely,
people. Follow suit,
definitely.
and I look. I say this as well, but like it's difficult, Rob. I mean, you and I both know. Like it's inverters are not cheap.
Yeah,
And then to create your own, like, you know, I don't know what you call it, reservoir or whatever, to have water, or borehole, or whatever you want to try and do to have your own water. It is very difficult, but it can be done, and you must do, like Rob said, do what you can within your means.
that's
And I think that's key. And again, get to know your neighbor, get to know your community around you. Um, that's very important for when shit hits the fan, because it will at some point. And I think
that will.
I think for those of us in the Western Cape, we're a little bit better off than those that are not. It's gonna get wild. It's gonna get very wild. And the reason why I say that is because of, if we look at the July riots, most of it was in obviously KZN, a little bit in Joburg. But the Western Cape, I mean, there was a few things that happened, but the police were quick to act and they stopped it fairly quickly. Didn't I
Mm.
mean it didn't get nearly out of hand as it did in KZN. So Western Cape
Mm.
kind of already is on its own in a way.
Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as a new recruit to the Western Cape, I have to agree that it's a completely different. It's like a different planet.
Welcome, welcome.
I,
I
I
won't
lived in
say. I won't say
I
welcome
lived
to
in
the
a hot
first.
suburb.
I won't say welcome to the first world. Well, welcome to the first world country, but I'll say welcome to second world.
Don't say that.
Nah,
But Joe, you're right. You- You're absolutely right. I think it's not all doom and gloom. South Africa's a beautiful country, absolutely beautiful country with beautiful people. It's torn apart by politics and politicians, and it's deliberately done that way. But just ignore them. We must just look to our neighbors and friends, get to know them. I bet you most people watching this show don't even know the names of their neighbors. Get to know them seriously, and not just the ones next door to you, the ones across the road as well. Know them. You have build up that community spirit, get people going, and realize the beauty and resources that this country has, and they're there for us as individuals. We need to make it work. We can't expect anyone else to do it for us. We have to take control, and we can only do that as a well organized community. We can't leave it up to individuals because we just simply don't have those means.
100%. And on that note, I'm going to end it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Please share this podcast far and wide. And thank you to everybody who tuned in: Hendo, Chris, Julie, Cameron, Gus. I've seen your comments. Sorry we couldn't get to some of the questions. But I really wanted to hear from DRSA and Rob himself what they are up to. So please let people know. And if you haven't yet, do check out the DRSA Telegram notification channel, or the DRSA channel on Telegram. It will keep you updated with all that is DRSA and what they are up to. Rob, any final thoughts?
No, I think I said my final thought there. I think just I can't say it enough. Just become less reliant on government. Don't
Yeah,
expect anything. If
fantastic.
if all else fails, lower your expectations. Lower your expectations of government, and realize that we have the power to change here, and only we do. That's it. And that's from me
Fantastic.
from the blue. Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see what DRSA is up to at the moment, please go check out as well. Link in the description. Their website, DRSA's website, is linked in the description, as well as Twitter. Their Twitter handles, Rob's and DRSA's, also in the description. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this very random, in a way, because I usually do this in the evening. But thank load shedding, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Rob, thanks again.
Excellent. Thanks, Joe.